Okay, so here's a really cool method of making like an expandable telescopic type piece of geometry that kind of works in states. It uses the state or key-driven states with some parent constraints. Um, it's really cool because you can kind of adjust the fall off on these expandable little items to kind of look more inorganic, like mechanical. And then you can actually add like locators with an aim constraint to kind of however you want to animate. If you want to twist this thing around and have it just, this values are only set so far, so you can actually the geometry will only pull out so far to where the values that were set in the original when you were doing the set driven keys will work for your values or your limitations, and you won't have to like sit there and like key every single piece of geometry in place, and you have a lot of motion and a lot of um, design with this, or a lot of ability with this. So let's go about recreating this object, and you can use this for your robots, turrets, telescopes, whatever. Um, but the big key is like getting this nice little flow here to where it doesn't bounce, which is really cool. Okay, so let's just recreate this real quick. So this is going to be my completed state. I kind of have it laid out how I want it to. Yeah, everything's set, so I'll just kind of make some controllers to control this thing. So I'm going to put this thing in its compacted state because that's where I'm going to start out. So I'm going to push this thing kind of down there. Like that basically is what it will look like whenever it's completely compacted. I mean, it will never like squish in more than that. You can actually set it like that, but I'm doing this so I can be able to see my geometry here. You'll just have to do wireframe if you do that. So to make some controllers, this is going to be like my giant master controller. Now I'm going to duplicate that one and make like a kind of a scope controller. I'm going to go to the side view and do this. This is what's going to drive the states. Now I'm going to duplicate that one again. I'm going to create three little tiny telescope or three individual scope controllers that I'll just kind of slowly start scaling down so you'll be able to see which is which. Make this a little bigger. Cool. So first things first, I want to delete the history and freeze the transformation on these controllers so that it sets them back to 0, sets everything to 0. So now I am going to put everything so they follow this master controller here. Drag everything to that one, and I'll call this the master. Okay, so now I need to start constraining my stuff on here. This is going to run the whole geometry, so I need to constrain this controller to this object right here. Make sure that this right here, there we go, parent constraint, parent constraint. Now what I do basically is I go up the line here and constrain the actual objects to their controllers. Now this one right here I'm not going to mess with, this outer one, because that's going to drive my states. I'm going to use that, but I'm not going to constrain it to anything right as yet. So I'm going to take this one, constrain it to that geometry. I'm just going to mash G, which repeats the process. Cool. So now each one of these controllers, each one of these pieces of geometry will follow the controller. So let's go ahead and set some states for this now. So in the animation tab, go to a key, set driven key, and this box come up. And if you haven't familiar with this, the robot rig video I put out with the controlling the fingers, this was the same process, except we're just going to be using one translation. We're going to be going up, so we're going to be affecting the translate Y. Driven in the drivers. The driver will actually be this controller right here. This will be my driver. So load driver. I want the attribute that's going to drive it is the translate Y. I already know it's going up. If you need to check it real quick, then undo it. So now the driven needs to be these three pieces of geometry which are parented to these controllers. So I'm going to select and deselect that one, and I'm just going to select these three controllers here. Load driven. Now select these and select translate Y. This is going to be my fully compacted state. So this is going to be my first key. I'm going to key it. Nothing happens. That's perfectly normal. You need to set another key state. So if I move this controller up here, it should be my first. Select these. I want all my geometry going right there. So that's going to be right there. I'm going to push this down just a little bit. So, okay, well. Push it down. You can get exact with this, but I'm not. I'm just going to. I don't want that selected. This is going to be my second state. So all three of these will need to be driven by this master controller or this controller right here. So everything's already selected where I want it. So I'm going to key this. Now I'm just going to kind of work my way up, but subtracting one of the pieces of geometry. So in other words, this is going to rise up here, and I want these two objects to go there. So driver's loaded. I need to get rid of this one right here. So I'm just going to go through and select these two, load driven, translate Y. I'm going to set the key for right there. Now the last time I'll do this, this will be my last state right here, or this one's probably too high up. I just need to repeat the process again, basically. So load driven. That state. So that should work. Let's try this thing out. Here we go. Cool. You see the way it kind of bounces in and goes in? I don't really want that because it's like it's easing in, easing out, and that's exactly what it's doing. A way to fix that. The graph editor in the animation. Let's look at the curve on these controllers that have animation on them. I see the easing of the easing out, easing in. That's what I want to get rid of. So I just want to turn this to linear, and I want to do that for all three of these. Now let's move this thing. Yeah, that's a lot more. The way they don't fall into the other ones on the way down. Cool. I mean, you can kind of get creative from here, like you did a lot if you've gotten this far. Now, being in that locator and putting on an aim constraint really adds to the animation of it, to the attributes of it, because you can actually. The problem I have with this sometimes is like you can't, if you do that, you have to basically try to turn that, then your controller may be off. You could do this, but let's get creative here and let's add a locator and put an aim constraint so you can kind of move it around like that. Create locator. The locator's down there. You just need to pop it up here at the top. I just kind of put it up there even to the top. I'm going to erase the history and freeze the transformation on this. Now while it's selected, if you select basically this controller here, you can add a Aim Constraint. Best thing to do is bring up the box here on this because there's a few things that may be not clicked that you need to make sure. You need to make sure the offset's clicked, and you need to make sure this world up type is none. That's so whenever you get to go to moving it around, it doesn't start flipping and twitching on you. So just make sure it's set to that. So we'll add that. That really should work. So if you select this right here now, you put this in the middle. Still not going in. I think I need to parent this controller to the actual Aim controller. Yeah, so this right here should be moving everything, pointing at it, but you want it to start compacting and expanding it, so you'll just need to parent constraint this top one, basically. So now, basically, when it moves, you can kind of compact it and impact it, or compact it and expand it however you like. Just kind of an added little thing there. The only thing, whenever you go to move it, it's going to always point there, so lo and behold, you probably need to make another big controller. And start parenting this. Just pressing P, parent that one. Taking the locator and pressing P, so that way whenever you move this one, the whole thing will move. Then you can kind of use this up here if you wanted to. A couple different ways. It's fun to get creative. If you wanted to move all these back to 0. There we go. So I hope that helps. Hope it's a fun little thing to do. It's kind of a good way to learn a little bit about the inner makings of this, adding these constraints with these set-driven keys. So, and then just kind of piling on your keeping things in order over here. You know, I didn't label these things right here, but I would suggest labeling and making sure that you know where everything's at. So whenever you connect things to stuff, you'll be able to keep up with it. So, okay, have fun and thanks for watching.